Let's do some questions. And see that number there on the right? That is my Google Voice number. And that means, well, let me put it this way. I do parenting conferences a lot. And at parenting conferences, people follow you to the car with questions. It's like, yeah, I think it'll be fine. You're just like, just trying to, right? But a problem with marriage conferences is, y'all, in our marriages, we have questions that you can't ask in front of everybody. Like, what do you do if your husband's a complete rageful maniac and he's sitting next to you like, I want you to be able to text me some questions that maybe are confidential, and that number, I'll get it. I will prioritize questions from the crowd, though. I want to try to look for the Google questions from you people at home and from any confidential questions. But Q&A.
I have the mic. Raise your hands. I'm going to take the first question.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, as you talk about forgiveness in the impulse control, makes sense to me. That's the hardest. The culture is now saying there's no forgiveness. It must be paid back. You must pay back what you've done, and there's a certain legitimacy of paying things back. But for you, what is the heart of forgiveness? I mean, what does it mean for me to forgive her or her to forgive me? What's down at the center of it?
Okay. All right. There's a lot of complexity to forgiveness, and so let me just go through some of the things to consider. First thing to consider, if you're making sense of forgiving someone, is that person repentant or not? In other words, we deal with a repentant and an unrepentant person in very different ways. And God tells us if someone is repentant and says to you, I really hate what I did to you, and I want to do anything I can to help you heal. Do you hear how at that point it's easier to forgive them? They're on the same team as you. Now, we still resist it because, there's something that feels good about holding a grudge against other people. It makes us not have to face our own brokenness, that we're capable of the same kind of thing. But God calls us to forgive a repentant person. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the mistakes that we make is by seeing forgiveness as a digital act. Like, okay, well, now I've forgiven you. Actually, so many verbs in the New Testament are written in what they call in the Greek the aorist tense, which means an action that has a beginning and a continuation, and you keep on doing it and don't stop it, and it keeps on going. Like, put away the things of the world. When Paul says that, it's an aorist tense. It's not like you do that today at 8:45. It's like you begin this lifestyle of living this process. So forgiveness has the same kind of notion in Scripture of entering this season of work to do. And it's really important that you see it as a season. Another thing that you got to be careful of regarding repentant versus unrepentant is I see a ton of people in my office who have someone who is still hurting them, but they're Christians and they come in and they go, oh, I know I should forgive them. God tells us to forgive one another. And I'm like, well, when's the last time it happened? Well, it happened this morning. Okay? In other words, it's impossible to forgive a behavior that's still ongoing. All right? By definition, forgiveness is related to issues in the past. Okay? So if it's an ongoing habitual act by somebody who's continuing to treat you in a hurtful way or continuing to gossip about you, I see so many poor Christians who come into my office saying, well, I know I should forgive them. And here's the victim feeling guilty because they're not forgiving this perp who's home like Cruella's home polishing her fingernails, So with an ongoing act or habitual act, I want to say the first thing that needs to happen is for us to make it a past behavior. In other words, we need to set some limits on it and stop it. Habitual apologizers, people who come and they hurt you and they're like, I'm so sorry. And they hurt you and they're like, I'm so sorry. And teenagers are like this. One of the things I like to tell people with a habitual, crook is when they come with their new apology, I want you to go, oh my gosh, thank you. That means so much. And since you are obviously so sorry, Would you tell me what you want me to do to you next time you do this? What are you willing to do for me next time you do this? Okay, and now you're going to find out real quick if they were sorry or not. Because a sorry person is going to go, oh my gosh, that's a good point. Tell you what, I don't get to watch any electronics for a week if I yell at you like that again. Go, I love you. All right? What they're probably going to say is, oh my gosh, I'm trying to apologize to you, and you're making it, and you know they're not sorry there, okay? Now, getting closer and closer to your question, you pick a really hard question, you'll get a hard answer. Another tricky problem with forgiveness. Any injury that requires forgiveness actually has two problems for the forgiver, not one. Okay? In other words, you injure me, I now have two problems, not one. I have the crime to forgive or not. Am I going to live in a position of self-righteousness? I would never do such a thing. You're such a horrible person. I'm going to hold this over your head. All right, I've got that issue. But secondly, I've also got an injury. You've hurt me. Now, a lot of people get these confused. And a lot of times you can see like a couple and maybe one of them is cheated or something and the other spouse is still hurting. And the cheater spouse starts saying things like, well, I don't understand why you need to keep talking about this. I thought you forgave me. Right? Now, I usually say to them, well, I think that he probably has forgiven you. What he's working on now is the injury. See, if you back over my foot with your car, I'll probably forgive you because I'm a bad driver too. But I'm going to need like surgery and rehab, and you're probably going to have to drive me, and we're still going to physical therapy, and you're going, I thought you forgave me for that. I'm like, I did. You just crushed my foot. It's going to take a while, okay? I was talking about forgiveness once, and this guy comes up to me afterwards, and he goes, well, I mean, that's all easy for you to say, but what would you do if your family was killed by Nazis or a mass murderer? And I'm like, well, A, are you thinking I'm saying I actually do this stuff well? You don't know me. And B, I said, I probably would not be able to resolve an issue with the Nazis or a serial killer, but I don't think my problem there would be forgiveness because I would never get to the question of forgiveness. I'd spend the rest of my life dealing with the injury, the loss. So forgiving or unforgiving is very different from I'm still healing from the sorrow and the pain you created. Now we're going to finally get to your question. Now notice you've created a cost for me. I'm going to avoid the political implications of that just because that's just all too dicey. But in general, it applies to everything. If there is an injury in our relationship, somebody has to pay. Somebody has to pay. You hit my car. Somebody has to pay. Either you pay to get my car fixed, or I pay to get my car fixed, or I drive a beater car around. Somebody's got to pay. Okay? Now, this is why forgiveness is so hard. Because when you injure me, it creates what I call a injustice gap. In other words, I'm injured and you're not. And we're not even Steven anymore. I'm down here hurt and you're not. Now, here's where it's going to start to sting. Forgiveness means I am willing to let that injustice gap stay and not get retribution and not make you pay. That you hurt me and I'm not going to hurt you back. God, are you kidding me? You can't do that without a Jesus. Now, the reason we resist that so much, one of the reasons that forgiveness is so hard, is because living with that injustice gap, that you have hurt me and I'm not going to hurt you back, feels so close to the edge of walking over the precipice of who I am and what you did to me doesn't even matter. Which is why, if you're repentant, you're going to really help this process. Because what are you going to be telling me the whole time I'm forgiving you? Oh my gosh, I'm so moved that you would let your heart be broken and forgive me, and that matters so much, and your pain matters so much, and you can talk about it anytime you want. I'm lucky you're talking to me at all, given what I did to you. Now you see what I'm saying to them? You matter, you matter, you matter, you matter. And they are in essence solving the injustice gap by this, get it? Not by me having to come up and take it back, but by them coming down and being humbled and broken like me. But now they aren't broken by me injuring them. They're broken by their humility that they hurt me. That's how forgiveness with a repentant person, and one of the reasons that God leans into that so hard. If you can be in a repentant position with, if you can be working to forgive a repentant person, you get that kind of sweetness developing of two broken people who end up at the bottom together. One broken causes an injury, and one broken causes an injured. All right?
This guy fixed my roof when I first moved to Tucson.
But it kept raining, so we couldn't do it. I thought it didn't rain here.
It's a heck of a note when you got the mic, isn't it? He takes up a lot of space, doesn't he? He's a great guy. I didn't expect this. Why does it make me feel so good when I forgive somebody else?
I feel like your heart knows and you can't put words on it.
No, I've done it.
Right.
And
Your tears say you know why.
Exactly right. There's a lot of people here, I don't think, realize that. And it is unbelievable.
Would you be willing to talk about why it feels good? I mean, you're already vulnerable. I don't want to put you in a worse spot, but this is body of Christ, man. I'm not Moses. Bring us the word. What feels good about it?
Have you ever carried a weight you can't handle? I'm talking about a heavy weight. And you hate somebody because of what he did to you. I'm not talking about this. I had another marriage, not with another woman. I had a marriage with a partner, business partner, and they called it the marriage. They meaning people around me. And this person, in my view, did me wrong, behind my back. It did turn out very, very good, but I carried a grudge against him for years. And in a Bible study, I was challenged. I explained this situation. You need to forgive him. I said, no way, ain't no way. There is no way I can. You don't know what that guy did to me.
I can see what it did to you to let it go. Can I speak on that a second?
You can't. Let me make one more.
Good. Yes.
So I'm suggesting to anybody that has a hate is a heavy, if you have a dislike for somebody, because this has happened to me twice, then forgive that person and the weight of your shoulders. It's hard to explain. It really is. You probably know more about it.
Let me try to explain it. Thank you. The person you're talking about was not repentant. All right? That's a different class. What I just talked about was a repentant person. With someone who's unrepentant and who's injured us, it's a slightly different octave. I'm not sure I would even call it pure forgiveness. It's some kind of a form of letting go. Because think about it like this. If you are living, holding on a grudge and an anger at somebody who has wronged you, they own you. And they own that part of you that they hurt. And we're the victim is the slave to the perp. So when we talk about forgiveness with someone who's unrepentant, someone who doesn't care, or maybe they're dead, how do you let go of that? Well, this is a form of letting go that's different than pure forgiveness, because it's saying, I am no longer going to live in a position where this defines me and owns me, where that injury defines my heart toward them or toward myself. And when you do that, there is an unbelievable letting go and relief, because you're letting go of something that's impossible to change. That's a huge piece with an unrepentant person, especially if that unrepentant person's injury is in the past. If it's still going, we got a different story. But if it's in the past, notice what you do with people you don't like. They run you, you know. You walk down a different hall at Sunday school, so you don't walk past them going to church, you know. I mean, they run you. And so letting go of that is an incredibly freeing thing. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I find it very interesting to come to a marriage topic and get into these kind of discussions. We have a daughter that does not know how to forgive, and that projects her sins onto other people. It's called projection. You can see it in Washington, D.C. right now, and it's a fascinating dynamic that any real and whatever situations caused emotional trauma, that number one, totally blind as to what it was or whatever. All people have imperfections. Our marriage was not perfect till God did a good work in it when we were 40. And the question is, when an individual holds a perpetual grudge, does not know how to forgive, not only projects her sins onto her parents, but then treats a specific sibling a certain way. How do you talk to somebody that doesn't value anything that you have to say to them because of a grievance in the past that they cannot forgive? What concerns me the most is every time we say the Lord's Prayer and we say the words, Father, forgive us as we forgive others, I cannot comprehend how an unforgiving person can go throughout their life, and then when they are before God, and if they mathematically don't forgive other people, how in the world are they going to expect God to forgive them? That is my focus on the problem. And I really believe that in Matthew chapter 25, the last parable, the sheep and the goats, that's the flock of Christ. And every goat that's in that parable thinks they're a sheep, which is what I believe, literally believe, that is the situation here.
So this is an adult offspring.
Adult, in their 30s.
Okay, and part of your concern is, how do you deal with someone who just is that hurtful and unpleasant in the sense of everybody else is bad and it's all your fault and I don't own anything?
Pretty much.
But also you have kind of something that nags you in the back of your heart, kind of like, does this like go to the level of unredeemed? Like, is she not part of God's people because of the way she lives like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to forgive and forget. I didn't even know I was doing anything. But the reflection is how do you deal with an individual that feels perpetually violated, and that anything you say is run through a filter where, you know, your words are meaningless because you were that way years ago. And
all right, so can you give me just like 2 sentences, examples of the way this person talks? What do they say? What does it sound like when they're projecting all this stuff? You would know, you're such a bad person. I mean, what do they say? Can you quote them?
Not here, not in this setting. I don't
All
think
right.
that quickly, to be able to verbalize
Right,
the
yeah.
imagery I have. I think in pictures, words are very difficult for me to express.
Okay.
Takes, a picture says 1,000 words. It takes me 1,000 words to get what I'm picturing. And I'm not capable of stringing them in a coherent.
All right, well, then let me take a shot at your question. Sure. I'll throw out some principles related to it. Since we can't get too specific into this particular issue, let me try to give more general themes that might apply. Again, we go back to the question we've talked about a couple of times, several times this evening, and I think it's the first question God asks when he meets somebody, and that is, are they repentant or unrepentant? Right? So the way in which we talk to somebody who's repentant versus unrepentant are very different. And if you confuse them, you get into some trouble. Couple of ways that I like to talk to people who are more blamers, accusers. I want to be, I'm not going to take on what they're saying in the sense of I need to defend myself or correct them or change them. We sort of got to give that up. So they say, you're so bad, it's all your fault. One of the things I'm going to respond to that with is, oh my gosh, I know that is what you feel, and you've made that very clear in the past. Now notice what I just said. I'm not going to change you. I'm not saying you're good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just kind of commenting. One of the things I like to do with an unrepentant, blamey person is just hold up a mirror. Well, I really get it that you really think I'm bad. Now notice I'm not squirming. That takes away a lot of power. A lot of power that blamers get is to see us squirm. We don't want to get blamed. We want to try to correct them. And I want to sort of, step one, kind of give up that notion of I'm going to change this person's mind. Okay? Now, a second thing I want to do with an unrepentant, blamey type person is I want to create a little accountability. I want to say, oh my gosh, you've made that very clear, all the things that feel so bad, and you talk about them frequently. Do you have any sense of what you need in order for you to be able to resolve that or move beyond that? We're open to hearing. In other words, what I'm saying is this, and I say this to people in my office all the time, especially complainers and he language, she language people. Don't you love it? We all have the same terminology now. We're all working on the same lexicon. He language people, I want to go, wow, it sounds like he's just awful. What do you think you need in order to be able to respond back to him in a powerful way? Okay? Like, I want to hear your blame for a while, but then I'm going to create a little accountability by going, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is? Do you want to just blame or do you want to create something better? So one of the things I want to say to her is, what do you think you need in order to be able to sort of let go of this burden that you carry? You carry such a burden on yourself about us. There's so much anger, there's so much wound that doesn't seem to go away. We certainly would be open to trying to be a part of that process. Do you have any sense of what that is? Or do you just want to say again all the ways in which we're bad? Just asking. Now you hear I stuck a little barb there at the end. I'm saying in essence, here's the psychological mirror again. Notice, you're just kind of wanting to say how bad we are. All right, thirdly, fourthly, I'm up to four. Four, okay. Or is that a hand raised? Okay, I'm almost finished, and then he's going to give somebody else the mic. I also want to consider, with somebody who's being a jerk, remember my examples of can this person can I let you be you? And the narcissistic spouse who wouldn't let his wife exist. And I was talking about how my wife had told me, yeah, I make mistakes and I will make others. When we're dealing with somebody who's acting jerky, one of the things we need to do is make a choice for us. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but one of the ways we deal with conflict with unrepentant people is that I need to think in terms of good, healthy limit setting. So if they make a statement like I gave you, what are you thinking inviting them to the party? Do you hear the tone? And I said, I'd like you to say something like, I'm not sure that's a question or a criticism. Another thing you could say is, I don't really want to have a conversation that begins like that. If you want to talk about how you were upset about who I invited to the party, we can talk about that. but I'm not going to have the get fussed at thing. So another thing I might want to think about in regard to y'all's situation is to say, Sally, you've made it very clear to us all the ways in which we've hurt you, and we certainly are open to talking about that. I'm not so comfortable doing it when you're slinging barbs, when you're just wanting to throw out little jabs about the ways we did this and the ways we did that. I don't think I really want to do the jab thing. But if you really want to be serious about addressing this, then let's talk. And she'll go, well, fine, you just proved my point, and she'll storm out of the house. But you're doing something redemptive. The only thing that changes jerky, blamey bullies is to have limits set on them. I hear you, I care about you, but I'm not going to have a conversation that's going to begin like that. If you want to talk about ways in which we've wounded you, great. If you want to throw barbs, not so much. With unrepentant people, think about it. Regarding God, what does a repentant person need? Forgiveness, restoration, patience, long-suffering, healing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what does an unrepentant person need? To become a repentant person, okay? Now, how do you do that? Well, usually in God's universe, it comes through limits. God says, you who are unrepentant, I'm going to do this to you, and I'm going to do that to you, and I hope you like the weather in Babylon, and then we're going to get back together 70 years later, but you're going to get whacked some, so you come back to me, okay? So when we're dealing with unrepentant people, it's sort of like that passage in 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Paul says, help the weak, rebuke the unruly, be patient with all men. And he's given these categories, right? And in other words, he's saying with these people who are vulnerable and struggling, help them out. Unruly people, they need a little rebuke. Be patient with all men. In other words, he's saying there are these categories. Now, in contemporary Christian circles, what you'll often see is people will rebuke the weak and be patient with the unruly. You see that a lot in divorces. Sessions will go side with the screaming out of control wife and, hold the husband who's the victim in here accountable. But anyway, one of the things I want to think about if I have a person who's bullying me is I want to hear you. I know that you're hurting. I care about that. I'm not going to try to change it or change your mind or make it better. I am wondering if there's anything you think you need in order to make this get better, or do you just want to complain about it for the rest of the time? And I don't really want to have a conversation that starts with the jabs. I don't do jabs. I do talk. But there's a limit to how you can treat me. She obviously feels that there's no limitation to the level of jerkiness she can do in relationship to y'all. And I want to begin teaching her that's not true. A good, kind limit. Now, a good, kind limit is always a rule about me. Notice I didn't say, quit talking to me like that. That's a rule about you. That's control. A good limit's a rule about me. I'm not going to have this conversation if you're going to keep yelling. I don't talk to inebriated people. Not, quit drinking. You hear? That's the difference between a good limit and being controlling. Okay? Good limit's always about me. Just some thoughts for y'all. All right. Boss?
Hey, can you answer a little bit about, or talk more about the impulse control, can I think part? So, say I know that's something I am bad at, like I'm one of the blah, 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 and then, I know that's my pattern. And I know you talk a lot about, him having to put up a limit with me, but, how do I grow or do something to prevent me from doing my feelings?
Oh, that's a good one.
On my,
Everybody hear that? That's a fun one. Yeah. And by the way, what a repentant question. We've been talking a lot about unrepentance. Here's somebody who says, how do I stop being such a jerk? You're close to the kingdom, Okay, so let's think about it like this. Couple of psychological principles. given any out-of-control behavior. And it can be acting out on your feelings, but I want to make it more general. It can be eating inappropriately. It can be, sexual acting out. It can be drinking alcohol. It can be, you and Amazon Prime. I don't worry about my wife having an affair, but she calls the Amazon Prime UPS guy. It's like, hey, Bob. He's like, Norms, how are you? I'm worried about that part of their relationship. Any out-of-control behavior, basic principle. What it requires is two things in order to make sense of it. You need to have some understanding and awareness and insight and connection and relationship with someone else about the emotion. Okay? In other words, we need to get curious and connected to ask what's driving this behavior. Why am I continuing to explode in anger? Why am I continuing to be blamey with you? Why am I continuing to eat too much when my pants don't fit? Why am I continuing this nasty, visits to spots on the internet? Why am I doing these things? I want to look at the innards of that. I want to understand what's going on with that emotionally. If you don't do that, then you're a whited sepulcher. You're painting over a rusty barbecue grill. That one reach home more? Jesus saying you're a whitewashed tomb. You look good on the outside, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. You can't fix the outside stuff without looking at the inner world. All right, that's driving this. But with an out-of-control behavior, if that's all you do is look at the inner world and understand your emotional motivations, what you'll get is a very nurtured and insightful, porn user, or rageaholic or something like that, okay? So you have to have part two, and that is the other thing that out-of-control behaviors need are literal limits set on us in reality. Literal limits. I said that one time at a conference. Somebody came up to me and said, what are liberal limits? I'm like, I don't know if they have them, but I'm sorry. Said I wasn't going there. Anyway, literal limits in reality, okay? And that means something has to happen. Okay? So I got a guy right now who, if he does porn, he gives me $100. And I use it to give for people who need therapy and can't afford it. Okay? I got a woman who's frighteningly overweight, and when she cheats on her diet, she doesn't get to read. She loves reading. Sometimes she has said, well, it's tough, I'm going to read anyway. And if she does that, I won't see her that week. Okay? So in other words, if I can't set a limit and stick by it, I have to have somebody else set a limit and stick me by it. Something has to literally happen to us. Now, let me tell you why that's so. The part of us that's acting out of control, okay? That part of us is that inner 6-year-old. Remember the little square? Okay? And 6-year-olds, they're like kids, And telling a guy to, quit yelling at your family because just think of how it's going to hurt them. Okay? To his inner 6-year-old, that's like telling a 6th grader, go do your homework because just think of all the people you'll help one day as a neurosurgeon. He's like, what? You got to take his Xbox away now, right? Okay, so in order to understand that out-of-control outburst stuff, you got to have a limit set on it. Have somebody looking inside what's driving this, and also a literal limit. I went through a season with Norma a few years ago in which we would get in a little tiff, and then I'd go upstairs to my man cave. I got a great man cave because all the girls are gone. It's like a suite. And I'd come down about 10 p.m. and I'd be like, and another thing, like that. And she'd be like, she's about ready to go to bed, and this monster comes in. And so the next morning, she's like, that was really scary and felt horrible, and I didn't sleep well, and you came in shouting at me. And I'm like, you're right. I'm so repentant. You're so right. I shouldn't do that. And about a week later, I did it again. And she said, this is really not okay. And I'm like, you're right. So I said, well, what do I need to do? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to talk to my therapist about this and figure out what's going on. B, let's put my money where my mouth is. Next time I yell at you like that, I lose my man cave for a week. I'm down here watching Grey's Anatomy, something like, talk about tough love, right? Anyway, a week later, I did it again. And to her credit, she goes, man cave. I have not done it since. Now, pardon me, ladies, but what's a woman going to say to that? Wait, so you love your man cave? You could stop it for your man cave, but you couldn't stop it for your wife? That's what every wife I've ever told the story to says. Okay, yes, right, yes. Why? Because I needed to talk to my inner 6-year-old. It's not like he's like not loving my wife. He just doesn't get it. We need to speak his language. You need to get concrete. Remember, kids are concrete, right? You need a concrete thing. I don't know. Is that going a good direction for you? Oh, well, come on. Come on.
I'm just saying that sounds hard, but I hear you.
It sounds hard?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to have consequences.
Oh, of course you don't. Okay.
Alrighty.
Raise your hand. I can't see.
I'm over here. Over here. Here. Hello. Sorry. I'm Nick. I am Alicia Peru's boyfriend. Yes. And so 10 years ago, about around that time.
Speak really loudly or take your mask down just for a second because I'm having trouble.
Sorry.
That's good.
10 years ago, I met this guy. We were just middle school buddies, and we went like our whole lives, and we've kind of been like friends on and off. I would say like it felt to me like an abusive relationship, but it was just with this like dude that I was with, and he was just very narcissistic, very like self-centered. Like he would just like. He'd turn everything into just a him. One time he like really hurt me with something, and I was like, dude, like this hurt me. Like, why did you do this? This was very mean. And he came back with like, well, I'm sorry you felt that way, kind of thing.
Right.
And it was a very like, oh my gosh. And this is kind of, I'm just kind of painting this picture a little bit, but it was just like. He sometimes will like come back up on like just pages I've blocked from him or whatever, and like or like text me randomly, and I still haven't blocked his number, and it just like ticks me off, and it makes me really mad, and I get in this really like I feel like I turn into another person when he contacts me or when he just like comes out and says these things, and it makes her mad. And it makes her like, why are you...
How it hooks you?
What?
It makes her mad how it hooks you?
Yeah, how it like changes me. And it like bothers her in this deep sense where she I don't want to speak, but she like, it's almost like she's like, why do you keep going back? Like, why do you keep like talking to him? Why do you keep...
Oh, do you keep talking to him?
Every once in a while, I've gotten better.
Okay.
But every once in a while, he'll say something. I'm like, ooh, and I just or it makes me sad, or like I feel like, wow, he's really hurt me, so I want to know why. Or something.
You want to know why?
Yeah, or something like that, and I'll just go back and I'll say like, well, this taking and it created a big problem for us at one point, and it was just like, and it just.
So there's like 3 really cool questions in your story.
Yes.
Is there one particular? What would you like me to know?
How do I best like? Should I just block him entirely? Should I just never speak to him again and just forget it? And how do I best forgive?
Well, there may be something rich for you in the story that I don't want you to lose. In other words, I think that one of the reasons that he continues to hook you is because that for a season there, he was kind of alphaing you. He was winning, you were losing. And he would do his garbage, and you kind of couldn't do anything back because there was some sense in which, emotionally speaking, you were at a little bit of I need you to treat me better. Why would you treat me bad? And that's kind of a one-down position. Okay, so he's kind of left this relationship the alpha. Now, as a man, that's going to always smart. Okay? You being powerful and having a dignity that says another person can't just take my dignity away like that, that's a really important thing for you to have. And so the fact that something in you gave that away relatively easily with him, that's your takeaway that I want you to sort of do your homework on. In other words, don't just write him out of your life and never talk to him again, and that's the solution. That would be missing this gold down at the bottom of that mine. And it's why it hooks her, because she sees you go down to this position, and she doesn't want to see you down in that one down position. She wants to see you as an alpha yourself. Just guessing here. And so the question for you to be asking, and this was a question that will generalize in other parts of your relationship, I bet, because we're not betas in just one relationship. I want to be asking, okay, what is it in me that I am needing to talk with an unrepentant, jerky person, work things out with an unrepentant, jerky person? Anybody who is taken advantage of by a jerk always asks me the same question. Why would they act this way? No, I do. Why would they drink so much? Why would they yell at us like that? And they always ask that question. And that's one of the tells that you're being someone who's being put in a one-down position. And what I tell them is, your job and my job is not to figure out why they are doing this. With an unrepentant, hurtful, bully, jerky person, it's interesting we're talking about that so much tonight. This is good. Like Sir there on the front row said, I didn't think we'd get into all these things at a marriage conference. Of course we get into these things at a marriage conference. This is what's going on down there. I'm not going to give you 5 meaningful touches, and men are microwaves and women are crock pots, remember? We're going to the nasty stuff. This is what's really going on, all right? People are always asking me, how do we help marriages in our church, and why there's so many divorces? It's because our culture doesn't take seriously how gnarly all this is. You guys are. Congratulations. Anyway, so with an unrepentant, jerky person, our job is not to try to amend things with them. If we reach for them and go, hey, dude, that hurt, and we get pushback, that's a really important sign that my next intervention needs to be amigo, you and I are kind of at a turning point here. If you're kind of in a place where you're not willing to hear how rotten this stuff feels that you're doing, I'm going to need to make some different choices about our friendship, pal. Then see what they do. If they blow you off then you're really getting a message that this guy is not as interested in having a relationship with me as I am with him. He's looking for somebody to actually dump his junk on. We'll talk tomorrow about why we look for opportunities to dump our junk on other people. But it feels good and it gives us something. And people will have relationships just to do that. Now, if you're open to receiving that, he's got it made, man. Easy street. He can dump his junk. You keep trying to resolve things and figure it out. So once you get to that point where you realize this person isn't repentant at all, our job is to move in that position I was at when I was standing where John was, where we start thinking about setting limits on an unrepentant person. I'm not willing to really talk to you, dude. Now, see, what I'm doing is moving out myself into an alpha position. I can't control him, but I can certainly protect myself from him, and the choices he makes then have nothing to do with me. But see, I've regained all my dignity. And that's why it's spanking you when you think about him, because you feel that loss of dignity from that relationship. In fact, I put it this way to my clients a lot. Our job is not to ask, why would they do this? Our job is to lay limits on them that make them so miserable and unhappy that they ultimately go, oh, why am I doing this? Okay? They're the only people who can answer that question. Our job is to put them in that position by doing what God does with unrepentant people, which is, spank them in a graceful, merciful manner. Anyway, no, seriously, but to set limits on them. That's the only thing that helps unrepentant people.
Probably last question.
All right. Oh, and shoot. Gang at home, whoever's texted me, I haven't even looked at my phone because we've been so wild here. Remember, I am defaulting to this group, but I'm going to try to look at them. Maybe we can get to some tomorrow. I apologize, all of you. Anyway, go ahead.
So me and my husband both come from broken families, and when we decided to start our own family and try to do the marriage thing, and neither of us had seen really a healthy marriage happen before. We're on our 5th year of marriage, and we have 2 small kids. And so we're still trying to work some things out. And we have been in a position a couple times where we've gotten into huge arguments in front of our small children, which is, I mean, it's embarrassing. But I guess my question is, as we try to correct...
You mean embarrassing to tell us that?
Yeah, I mean, I just like...
We've never had big fights in front of our children, have we? What is she talking about? I'm not sure I understand. This is your body of Christ here. You hear it?
Yes.
They're fellow strugglers, okay?
I guess my question is as we try to correct some of these behaviors or try to gain some of these skills, I guess how much of that do you think, as someone who works with parents and kids, how much of that do you think our kids should be seeing from us? And how do you think that we need to respond when we fail? How do we explain that to our kids? I mean, our daughter's 3, but she's going on 4. She asks so many questions and imitates, oh yeah, big time. And, it just kind of struck me one day. She asked, like, why doesn't Daddy love you sometimes? Sorry. And it's like, it's hard to explain to a child that small, like, that's not what it means at all. Like,
how old is she again?
She's 3. She'll be 4 in March. And it's hard to explain to her that, like, it's because we love each other. Sometimes that's why we argue, because things are more important. Things are, So I'm just wondering, like, as we try to raise our kids to have healthier marriages than we do, hopefully, and that they get off on a good start, how much of this should they be seeing us? Yeah.
That's good. Well, the subtitle of the parenting book is How to Give Your Kids What They Need and Where to Run When You Drop the Ball. And so I'm going to use that kind of as my model for answering it. In other words, answer number 1, I think it's fine for, there's people who say, never let your children see you fight. If they see you fight and you can reach a resolution and they can see that too, that's kind of cool. I mean, Norma and I would have fights and we'd have our door closed and the kids would bang on the door and go, y'all. That's a third-person plural pronoun. I don't know if you guys have that, but it's really handy. It's a plural version of you. But anyway, they go, y'all, and we go, we're fighting right now, so we'll be out in a little bit, okay? And we just made no bones about it. Like, we fight sometimes, and then we come out arm in arm, and they get to see kind of the complete cycle. I'm not afraid of that. If it gets to where you're both losing it, I do want you to do everything you can to not let that happen, okay? So for your children to see conflict and see disagreement or even see anger but see resolution, that's sweet. That's good stuff. If y'all are losing it, one of the things we'll talk about tomorrow, the conflict talk tomorrow is the most practical of my talks, because conflict and fighting by its very nature is this sort of reactive, impulsive, inner 6-year-old, inner, reptile, reactivity we do to each other. And I want to give you sort of some frontal lobe thinking tools, okay? And so one of the things that we'll talk about tomorrow is how to actually stop that kind of thing, just to let just whatever happens next, it can't be this anymore, okay? In other words, a very underused intervention with couples is the ability for somebody to just pull the kill switch on it and stop it, and let's resume it later when we've got our sanity back, okay? So, do all you can to avoid that kind of thing, and I'm going to give you some tools to do that. But one of the things I say in the book is that we teach grace to our children both by teaching them about God's grace and by helping them learn about how much we need God's grace too. Okay, we learn grace by needing grace. And one of the ways in which it sets the parents free, the thing I wanted to get away from is parents in our culture are so imprisoned by we can't do anything that's going to screw up our kids. They're ruined for life. They saw us fight, and there's all these, I want to say, part of showing Christ to our children and part of raising them to be whole people in the world means engaging them with our failures too. And I wouldn't be afraid of that. Even with a 3-year-old. If she says, why does Daddy not love you sometimes? I go, you mean when he yells? Well, that is silly, isn't it? It's kind of like when you have a tantrum like you did the other day when we left the playground and you fell in. And Daddy kind of has a tantrum, and I did too, and that's really all not good, is it? Daddy has some growing to do, and so do I, and so do you, and we're all just a big old mess who love each other, and Jesus loves us too. And I think, I'm glad you spotted it, because he spotted it too, and we spotted it. I'm talking to her like this. Okay, I'm sort of going, welcome. Did the fact that your parents were fallen, did I not put that on my resume? I'm sorry. We're screwed up people too, and welcome to the club, and yet we're going to repair it and heal it, and we're trying to be in a growth process, and I'm glad you're talking to me about it. And we sort of make it kind of a no biggie and welcome them into that fold of, that's one of the reasons I teased you by saying, hey, y'all, because I heard that in you, and I wanted to challenge that. Welcoming broken people to the community is what grace is. I mean, we don't forgive one another because of our benevolent loving kindness like God does. Jesus says we forgive one another because who are we to talk? Okay? So apply that to your children, and your children go, you were mean. And I want to go, you know what? I think I was. That's just not okay, is it? I need to do some work there. And I'm going to talk to my friends and your mom. You're still going to timeout. But you were right. I probably need to go to timeout too. Okay? So I'm not going to give up my limits by showing them my humility and love. But anyway, we live that dance. Okay?
Thank you, John Cox, for tonight.
Yes. I look forward to seeing y'all in the morning. No. Thank you.
We'll be back here at 8:30 in the morning. We'll have coffee and a few small breakfast items. So go in peace. We'll see you then. Sleep well. And don't argue on the way home.